Greetings, programs, and welcome back to the TV thing, and quite a short one because this one's more of a recommendation than a full review. This is a comedy show, Inside Number 9, and it's got some quite familiar faces in it in the form of Reeve Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton. I keep wanting to mash those together into something like Reeve Pembersmith, but that's just how my brain works. They are, of course, quite well known for being part of the League of Gentlemen, but they were also in a previous BBC series called Psychoville together, which I think they wrote that one as well. I'm not sure. That one was a bit. I'm not quite sure how to describe Psychoville. It was sort of entertaining, but I don't know. I'm not sure I would recommend that one. But Inside Number 9, by contrast, is relatively easy to describe and a lot easier to recommend. It's basically a darkly comic anthology show. And, of course, I've talked about Black Mirror previously. Well, this is sort of similar. I mean, it's just separate stories in each episode, but it has rather a different focus. Black Mirror was all about looking at the intersections between humans and the technologies that we create, and how sometimes that can go really quite wrong. It's not meant as a kind of dystopian, horrifying look at how awful we are. It just kind of ends up that way in some episodes of Black Mirror. But Inside Number 9, it's rather more disparate. There's no real focus. The thing that ties the stories together is that, as the title suggests, each one takes place inside Number 9, and that might be a house or a flat. One of them takes place in a barn. One of them is in I think it's a cubicle. It's supposed to be like cubicle Number 9. One of them takes place on board a sleeping compartment in a train. So there's a fair variety, and there's also a fair variety in the kinds of stories that get told as well. Now, there's 2 series on Netflix at the moment. I think there's a 3rd series that's been on the BBC that hopefully will come to Netflix at some point. I caught a couple of the series, of the episodes of the 2nd series whilst they were airing originally. So I was aware of this show, but I managed to miss most of it. So it was quite nice coming across it on Netflix and then just being able to sit down and watch the 2 series, the 12 episodes. And I have to say, overall, I probably enjoyed the 1st series more, but there were still some good stories in the 2nd one as well. But the standouts for me were the 2nd episode of the 1st series, and was it the 1st or the 2nd episode of the 2nd series? Both of which were very different tales. And I won't talk about specifics because it'll give away what happens in the stories. They're very much all stories with a twist for the most part, and the 2nd episode of the 1st series especially just kept having twist after twist to the point where it was actually really quite enjoyable because it was done in a very knowing way. It was done in a very kind of like, oh well, now what kind of way. There's a real variety of stories in there, both in terms of the tone, in terms of the outcomes, in terms of the kind of twists they throw in, and overall, it's just a really enjoyable show. It just hit the right spot for me in some way. So this really wasn't a very in-depth episode at all, but it is definitely worth checking out. They're only half-hour episodes each. And being a British show, there's only 12 episodes in total on Netflix at the moment. Obviously, there'll be another 6 once the 3rd series hits Netflix. But I can recommend this one. It was quite enjoyable. And, of course, coming out of the League of Gentlemen, both Pemberton and Shearsmith are very good at creating very distinct characters. And that definitely helps for a show like this as well. So Oh, and I should also mention the guest cast is very, very strong as well. They have some very familiar faces. There's some that are maybe more familiar to me from listening to radio stuff, like Rosie Cavallero, for instance. I think Ben Will Bond is in one as well. But they've also got people like David Warner, for example. So, there's a really nice mix. And Gemma Arterton's in one as well. So that's Inside Number 9. I can definitely recommend that one as a rather enjoyable little show. I've got probably a much more involved episode coming up very soon because I've just finished watching Star Trek TNG, so there'll be a lot of nerdy rambling about that, I expect. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, and if you have, you can hit the like button, leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, you can check out my main gaming channel of course, and as always, stay tuned for more.